Hi everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, here with Matt.
Hey guys.
And Will.
Hello.
And we're doing another book episode where we're going through all of our Van Halen and related books that we've got out there. And we're going to go in chronological order. There's plenty of Van Halen books. I don't think there's as many as Kiss, because we did the Kiss episode. But there's some good ones here. We're going to talk about what we have. The oldest one that we have to show you is actually my only Van Halen tour book, the only time I saw them in 1995 on the Balance World Tour, which was the end of an era for sure. And got this at when I saw them at Old Orchard Beach, Maine. This has lyrics of the songs from the album and photos. Let's see. Yeah, just quotes from each of the band members, and then in the back,
Road manager and everybody's.
yeah, it's got all the. I thought this was kind of cool. This is their personnel that they have on tour with them, and it's funny because you don't normally recognize people in the personnel, but their keyboard tech is Alan Fitzgerald, who first of all played with Sammy in Montrose, but was also the keyboard player in Night Ranger. And at the end here.
Oh, yeah.
Is the Van Halen discography, because they're supporting Balance, the most recent album. But this is one of the first, I think this is the first tour book I ever got that had a website on the bottom of it. So there you go. That's the oldest one. And the next one we all have. I've had it the longest, yet I'm the only one with the paperback version. David Lee Roth's Crazy from the Heat. Dave put this out in 1997, the same time he put out his Best Of CD. And as anybody that has read this book will tell you, it's a really good look inside the mind
Of David
Lee Roth. And if you can follow it, it's a great book. And there's some fascinating stories. Dave's a smart guy. He's just on a different plane than everybody else.
It's not chronological.
No.
It's not
It'll
even
be-
logical sometimes.
No, it's kind of all over the place.
A page of the start of a story, and then an 8-page tangent, and then a half a page wrap.
Like he could be talking about being in the studio. Next thing you know, he's climbing a mountain in Nepal, or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's some interesting insight into the chapter called Reunion Blues, is the one most people talked about when it first came out. Is the ill-fated reunion in '96 where they went on the MTV Awards, and then they did the 2 new songs for the Best Of album, and that didn't pan out. Yep. Although eventually, as we all know, Dave ended up back with Van Halen, and actually Will is the only one of us that's seen them with Dave. Saw them in 2015.
Yeah, 2015 in Bangor.
Yeah.
Pavilion.
Something that threw me off about this book. So Crazy from the Heat. That was his
first EP.
So I was like, so this book is how? Like I didn't realize that it actually came out like.
In '97, because that's basically from the cover shoot, from the out. So the first quarter of this is all about California girls.
No, exactly. But it does come out. How far would you say this book goes up to? So
this goes up to
EMT, and then
it's in '97. So by this point, he's done with Van Halen, and he doesn't really talk much about doing music after that.
Yeah.
So
he just talked about his solo stuff a little bit.
Yeah, he talked about
working with Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan.
He talked about Crazy from the Heat, Eat 'Em and Smile, Skyscraper. He talks about a little late enough. He talked about Jason Becker, who sadly got ALS, and
my favorite Dave record.
It's a good album, and it's got some pictures inside of it. Like I said, if you can follow along, it's
some fantastic photos in here. But yeah.
There's some great.
You said the paperback is the black and white photos, not the colored.
Yeah. And there's probably more photos. Actually, I've never actually seen the hardcover version.
Yeah, I think there must be more.
There's some of them are the same, but you've got some different ones there. So that was Dave's book, and that was the first book that was written by any member of Van Halen. The next one I'm going to show you came out in 2007, and it's an unauthorized book. It was written by a guy named Ian Christie, and it's called Everybody Wants Some, the Van Halen Saga. This is a really, really interesting book, and it's as recent as, so it came out in 2007, so it's as recent as Van Halen's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which of the band, only Sammy and Michael attended. But this has I learned a lot from reading this book. There was a lot about the band I didn't know. And there's a lot of these photos spanning the decades with them. Most of them are taken by this guy named Kevin Estrada.
Yeah, I really like at the end. It's got like talking about all the rarities and like all the guest appearances and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
It's
stuff
kinda
that
neat.
you wouldn't know. It's at times that Van Halen was mentioned in movies. Concerts that are known to exist, but no one knows about. Yeah. Just because there are some of these appearances nobody really knew about. But it's unauthorized, so I mean, you can take that for what it's worth. But I don't disagree with a lot of the stuff because it goes in depth about every aspect of Van Halen's career. And if you were a newcomer to the band and you wanted to know about them, I'd start with this book because it's non-biased.
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's not coming from any one member of the band. Speaking of, in 2011, my favorite Van Halen singer, one of my favorite singers, period, Sammy Hagar, finally put out his autobiography called Red, My Uncensored Life in Rock. And I thought this was a great read. And it gives a lot of insight into Sammy's life. He basically came from next to nothing and made something for himself. Talks about his years with Montrose, his solo career, obviously joining Van Halen, post Van Halen, back in Van Halen, post Van Halen, Chickenfoot. It doesn't go as recently as The Circle, but Chickenfoot were the going concern when this book came out. And I learned a lot from reading this book too. It's got a lot of cool pictures. He talks a lot about Cabo Wabo Cantina,
Yep.
which started out as the entire band's venture, but they bought out of it. He kept it on, made money with it. That created tension.
What'd you think of the book overall? Is it like was it as spiteful as you would expect it?
No. It really wasn't. It was the overall tone I got from it was sadness at how the Van Halen thing ended. Both times, in 96 and in 2004. So if you're not a Sammy fan, you're not going to get much out of this book, but it's a good rock read, I think. It doesn't, it's the polar opposite of Dave's, because this is chronological. It has a sequence to it, but they're two completely different personalities. Now, Will's got one of the coolest books to talk to you about.
Yes, so the next book is Van Halen Rising. Came out in 2015.
Yeah, written by Greg Renoff, who we'll talk about again.
Yeah, so this is basically talks about all the Van Halen forming back, playing backyard parties and high school gigs and all the makeup.
I've seen interviews with Greg where he said when he realized that there were 5 full years that Van Halen were together before their first album came out, and that early history was never really talked about. Yeah. Well, he got down to business and talked to people that went to school with these guys and saw some of these infamous backyard parties. Of course, he talked a lot to Ted Templeman, which leads us to another book, which we'll talk about.
Right, so this is the first Van Halen book I read, and it pretty much told me most of the stuff that I needed to know to get into the band.
Well, I mean, they were a big band pretty much from their first album on, so they were out there in the public eye. So it's not hard to find out information on Van Halen as a recording artist. But there's a lot of gold in there. There's a lot of stuff
really
like
good read.
How they, how 5 years is a long time, and for 5 to just plow away the way that they did, playing all these cover songs, learning their craft, it's a great read. It's a great.
Talking about how Eddie never left his guitar and went through girlfriends that didn't like him because he wouldn't go away from his guitar. Yeah. All that backstory.
He was so dedicated to that's how, I guess, sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah.
So next thing also came out in 2015. Another book by Sammy.
Different kind of book, though.
Different kind of book. It's called Are We Having Any Fun Yet? Which is something he would commonly say from the stage, the Cooking and Partying Handbook. So this is Sammy Hagar with Josh Sens wrote this book. This book is, it's part recipe book, it's part history book on his family history, it's travel, talking about the different, it's broken up into chapters and the recipes are based on where he's at. So obviously you've got Cabo. I mean, and recipes that are native to there. There's a section on Maui.
Really high quality book.
Yeah, some cool pictures, and this is
Forward by Emerald. Did you mention this already?
Yeah, Emerald
Forward?
Lagasse. Yeah. So he's got Emerald Lagasse. He's friends with Guy Fieri. He's he's friends with a lot of people. But so this is the pizza sauce I wanted to try.
Yes.
Basic ass tomato sauce. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. This is a cool book, and it's a lot of stories, and it kind of brings his the autobiography up to date a little bit.
Yep.
So now Will's got another book about the early days, and I think Matt's got it too. This was written by their former manager, Noel Monk.
Right, so Running with the Devil.
Boom. Boom.
So I actually haven't read this book yet, so you guys got to fill me in.
So this basically goes through from 78 to 85 of touring with Van Halen.
So
being on the road.
So chronologically, it kind of picks up where Van Halen Rising left off.
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't talk about the band itself and the forming, it just talks about being on the road and...
Yeah, he's got some really neat anecdotes in here. I was trying to find some of that stuff, but...
So Noel Monk was Van Halen's manager up until they split with Dave. Then I think he
continued with
Dave.
About working with Dave and how it came about that he brought the California Girls single in while Van Halen was still doing shows and how it caused problems.
Well, yeah.
More problems.
There's not a... Oops. There's nothing right there.
So that's Noel Monk. Their original manager was Marshall Burrell, who was Milton Berle's nephew.
Oh.
On their first album. Noel Monk was after. I think Noel Monk started as their road manager, I believe. Actually, and Dave... No, it's not in Dave's book. It's in the Ian Christie book. When Van Halen and Dave split in 1985, a lot of Van Halen's creative people went with him. A lot of the road crew, the stage designer, the guy that directed designed their videos. They all went with Dave.
So he was the road manager, and they asked him to be
their
tour manager, and he got them to interview with other people before they settled on him.
Okay.
He knew he wasn't perfect for the job, but he would give his all nonetheless.
Interesting. I got to read
We
that.
talked about that.
And then the last book is one I dedicated a whole episode to, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. And it's not strictly a Van Halen book, but Van Halen plays such a big part. It's another Greg Renoff book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. Now, honestly, I don't even know if half of this book talks about Van Halen, but when it does, it goes full on, kind of like the same time period you mentioned. And actually a little bit beyond that, because Ted worked with Montrose. So he worked with Sammy on those first two Montrose albums. Van Halen, the first album through 1984, did Sammy Hagar's VOA album, also in 1984, and he did Dave's Crazy from the Heat and Eat 'Em and Smile, and then he worked with Van Halen again on From Lawful Carnal Knowledge. So he's come full circle with the band. And this goes into all the detail, and it tells similar stories about the breakup, how when Eddie built his own studio, 5150, he did it so he could basically do it himself. And and Dave talks about Ted talks about he and Dave both sitting outside in the parking lot waiting for someone to let them in and not knowing what was going on. So, but all of these books are worth reading, and you get a different. Not all of them are really about Van Halen, because Dave's book doesn't all talk about Van Halen. Sammy's books don't all talk about Van Halen, and Ted's book certainly doesn't. But you get glimpses as to the inner workings of the band.
In all different time periods, too.
Yeah. I don't know if Michael Anthony's got a book in him. But
I'd read it.
Poor Mike has just been the punching bag for Eddie and Alex for years. And you read that in a lot of these books, which I just don't get. But anyway, that's our collection of Van Halen related books. Have you got anything different? Is there anything we're missing that we should check out? And we appreciate you watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.